and everybody's freaking out. And at this point, one of the towers falls next to
Yeah.
So, of course, what I did was I jumped up and called my Coke dealer.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Milligram. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you owe me. Joined, as always, by the Hush of Harleys, the gearhead, the Batman villain Hush. It's one of the best Batman stories so far.
All right.
Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee, I think, are the creators on that one. Anyways,
Yeah.
we have a special guest here. Are you going to interrupt me?
No.
No, you got to interrupt me.
Oh, yeah.
I think we already got to that part.
You skipped over the whole... It's all good. Anyway, you should like and subscribe if you dig what we're doing. That's all I got to say.
Mental Defectives Podcast, wherever you get your social media, because that's where we is, Mental Defectives Podcast. Because today, we have a very special guest. He's a sober father, fiance, and self-proclaimed nerd, a Buckeye with a Dochi problem, a Gen Xer IT guy who got sober before T.I. dropped Paper Trail. Please welcome Justin.
Hey.
Justin, how's it going?
All right, that was quite an introduction, actually. You do your homework.
Yeah, I hit on all the important stuff.
He's good at those intros.
I'm impressed.
I do what I can. Justin, where are you from?
I'm from Westerville.
Nice.
Yeah, I was actually born in Mount Vernon, but I grew up in Westerville. Went to Westerville South and moved away for a while, but moved back.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
And when was the first drink?
Well, first drink. I think probably my first drink I was really young. I was probably when I lived in Mount Vernon still. I was so young that there's no way I can remember, but I just know from my family there and from the way things went down that that's more than likely where it was. It's probably quite a while before I had another one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was born in Mount Vernon, and I'm a little bit older, Gen Xer. I was born in 1970. So Mount Vernon, Ohio in 1970 was probably a little bit backwards. I'm biracial. My dad's black and my mom's white. Mm-hmm. So in 1970 in Mount Vernon, Ohio, that wasn't a real that wasn't real common.
Wasn't great. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know any different, but
sure.
Looking back, I do know. Mm-hmm. So I grew up there. My dad and mom got divorced when I was probably about 4, and my brother's 3 years younger than me. So I was 4, he was 1. And my dad kind of just disappeared. I really have no memory of him from when I was young. My only memory of him is probably one memory I have of him and my mom fighting and me holding on to her leg and telling him not to fight. So that's a tearjerker. So we were in Mount Vernon, and I have a brother who's 1. I was 4. My mom stayed really close with my dad's side of the family, and then her side of the family also lived in Mount Vernon. My mom remarried. She met a guy who's from Fredericktown, Ohio. He's a farmer, lived on a big working farm and stuff. And he raised me and my brother. He ended up adopting us a few years later after him and my mom got married, and we took his last name. And greatest guy in the world, raised us like we were his own kids. I mean, he's my dad as far as I'm concerned. But when we were young, after my parents got married, they moved to Westerville, but their families were in Mount Vernon, and we would go back there on holidays and whatnot. They basically left Mount Vernon, drove up Route 3 till they hit Westerville and got a place. And I look back now, or not just look back, my mom told me later that she got me out of Mount Vernon because she didn't want me around a lot of the crazy family out there, and that she just wanted more for us and wanted to get away from there. And I don't think they had good times. She had a hard time because me and my brother and my dad being black and some stuff like that. So anyway, the point of the story is that I grew up, when we would go to Mount Vernon, my mom's side of the family was like straight 50s household style. Like, I'm a huge TV movie guy. We talked about that a little earlier. And so when I think about my mom's side of the family, I think about shows like Archie Bunker. the old school. And my
Some Leave It to Beaver.
yeah, Leave It to Beaver, Archie
Yeah.
Bunker 50s style. What was it, Andy Griffith Show type
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
So there's my grandpa was like the typical dad from that show. My grandma was like Edith from Archie Bunker. She was like the typical like taking care of her man kind of guy. And then there was my mom was their daughter. They had she has two other sisters and a brother. And so growing up in that side of the household was very like white bread, very like Leave It to Beaver, pretty much like you were saying. And my dad, my real dad, my biological dad, my mom was really close with his family. So when they broke up or whatever, separated and got divorced, he left. He was gone. He left town, everything. He has like 3 brothers and 4 sisters, and then his mom that all lived in Mount Vernon. My mom was really good friends with them. They all had kids that were all my cousins and stuff. So we stayed close with them, and she thought it was important for me and my brother to be around them, that side of the family. So every time we came home for any holiday or did anything, we spent a good chunk of time with my mom's side of the family and a good chunk of time with my dad's side of the family. So kind of the whole point of that is that when we go to my dad's side of the family, night and day from my mom's. There's Leave It to Beaver over here.
Yeah.
When we went over there, it was straight up like Sanford and Son.
Sure.
That was
Moving on
basically
up.
moving on. Now it's the Jeffersons.
Come on, man.
Man, come on. It was more like
Before my time.
It is. It's before your time. That's good though. You had a good reference. It was like Good Times or Sanford and Son. So it was. They were a lot more poor. Literally in Mount Vernon, it was like the other side of the tracks kind of a thing. And my cousins were kind of wild. My uncles were kind of wild. One of my uncles, like 2 of my uncles were in the Black Panthers and had like the tattoo.
Oh, no shit.
They owned the Elks Club in Mount Vernon, which is like, like a Moose Lodge or Elks Club. And everybody called it the Black Elks Club because they ran it. And we would go there a lot. They did a lot of family stuff. And we would go there and all my cousins would be there and they'd have big cookouts. And you walked in the Elks and I thought it was just the coolest thing. And it would be kind of dark. And there was a pool table and a jukebox and a bar.
Yeah.
And all the women would bring like food and kids would be, that's when you got to run around crazy as a kid.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
All your
Right.
cousins, adults are drinking,
Yeah.
kids are running around, dogs. And the place was right next door to a junkyard. So of course, kids,
how
kids are-
fun
we
is
immediately
that?
hit the
Yeah.
junkyard.
Right. Yeah.
That was, but what I remember is it's just the point of that is that early on I learned to adapt. Like wherever I was, I could learn to be like a chameleon to that area. Because when I was with my cousins and people there, I was like a different person than when I was like in Westerville, which was a different person than other places. And so there's that, and I just mentioned that because it just definitely has a bearing on kind of how things turned out for me. And but we moved to Westerville. Everything was cool. Elementary school was like elementary school. There's just normal stuff. I was always rambunctious, but at that time, I think I lied a little more than some kids. Maybe got in a little bit more trouble. But I did sports to it kept me grounded a little bit, I think, and it was kind of nerdy. We played Dungeons and Dragons at the library, so it was kind of weird.
Nice.
The original. I remember when the very first book came out. I wish I still had that thing. And
Probably worth some money.
Oh,
now.
yeah, no
right.
doubt.
So, so after elementary, I'm not going to go grade to grade, believe me. But spring break, my sophomore.
Right.
But there's definitely some stuff in the beginning that I want to touch on. So, elementary, we had this clique of friends. We're all, when you're elementary, everybody knows everybody. You're just in a class all the way through for 6 years. And when we got to junior high, I remember things really changed because I remember that's when kids came from all different schools and you came together. But what I really remember the most is it was the first time I was really conscious of cliques. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like before that, we were all just who we were and different people or whatever. I played football, so I met a bunch of the guys during the end of summer playing football, getting ready for right before school started. So we knew each other. And once school actually started, I just remember being kind of conflicted and being kind of thinking it was weird because I had these new football friends I hung out with. And then some of my old friends I grew up with in elementary school, well, they were like nerds now. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but they were like in band and they did other stuff. And like it was awkward at points. And I remember feeling like kind of like again, I don't want to be mean to these people, but you know, I don't really want to hang out with them. But I just remember there were cliques, and I just never felt like I fit in. You know, every alcoholic, or I don't even think it's an alcoholic trait; it's a human trait probably. But
It's a teenager thing.
it's especially teenager. So my 7th grade year, my mom said, "Hey, you should have a Halloween party, invite people over, and get to meet people, whatever." I was like, "Cool, sounds good." So I invited all these people to this Halloween party, all bunch of 7th graders, and as soon as I did it, I immediately was like, "This was a horrible idea." You know what I mean? Like I did it, and I'm like, "Nobody's gonna come. This is the most embarrassing. Oh my god, my parents! These people are gonna meet my parents. My house is a crap hole." My dad was a construction worker. My mom stayed at home with me and my brother. Saying we were lower middle class was really exaggerating because we bought like the cheapest house you could buy. My dad was constantly in a state of being worked on, you know.
Yeah.
So we decorated my basement for this Halloween party. I didn't think anybody was going to come. At first, there was just my friends from like 6th grade and under, you know, the kind of neighborhood kids. But then more and more kids started showing up, and I was like, "This is kind of cool." And so we had some candy, and we had a boom box, and I don't even know what you do, and we're down in the basement like having this party. And at some point I just remember the basement door opened and some people came down, and it was like the cool kids, like for sure cool kids. There was the quarterback of our football team was his name was Chip, literally, and there was these 2 sisters who were both cheerleaders, these blonde girls, Tina, and I don't want to start saying too many names, but there's a bunch of cheerleaders and football players that in my mind were kind of the cool group, right? Because they were cheerleaders and football players, and they had a lot of friends. And so they come down and they're like, "Hey, what's up, man? Come over here." And we end up sliding over into my little laundry area that was kind of sheeted off from the rest of the area for a second. And there was window wells, you know, like the window wells, like you. And they had hidden some loose beers and airline bottles. Yeah. Airline bottles of liquor and loose beers down in the window well before they came to the door. Yeah. So we went over, we pulled them down, and this little group of us were standing in the little laundry area, and we're like passing around a couple beers and a couple airline bottles. And I was like, "This is awesome," you know? Yeah. And so we go back into the party, and I just remember it was like kind of dark. Like we had lighting was weird. I don't remember what it was, but it was a Halloween party. And I was having fun. And the very first thing I remember being different was I walked out, and there was this girl. Her name was Lisa. And she was kind of tall, you know, it's junior high, I'm in 7th grade, so she's probably like a foot taller than me. That's what I remember. And she looked like a woman, you know, like, without going into too much detail, right? You know. Right. And I was like, "This girl's so hot." And I remember I went up to her and I kissed her. And I've never done anything like to me that was like some stuff from a movie, you know, like I went up and laid one on her, and she was kind of like, "Oh," and then I don't remember much except for I was. At one point, I was standing in the middle of the basement, and I had a sheet over my head. I don't know if I was like trying to be a ghost or just being stupid. And I was like spinning around, and there was music playing, and the sheet got yanked back, and it was my dad. Oh! And there was nobody there. Oh. Nobody. It was me. Shit. It was just me. Yeah. Oh no. And I was like, "Wow, what? That's weird." And so it turned out that. At some point, I really don't remember much about it. I kind of remember some drama with some girls. There's a handful of girls that were there. There was one girl that has like 3 older sisters that were like a year ahead of us and 2 years ahead of us or something. And one of them was in high school. One of the girls, those group of girls that came over had stolen acid from their sister. No idea what they're doing. Right. We're in 7th grade. Yeah. But they all like split it and took it. Oh no. So they started freaking out at some point. They were upstairs in the bathroom. My mom was like talking to them, and they're crying. And then like some more stuff happens, and so they start calling parents. My mom did. Started calling her parents, and then they thought they were calling everybody's parents, and everybody basically scattered and had to leave, and they whatever. Yeah. So my parents ground me immediately, and this is in the 80s, so when you got grounded, you were cut off from the world. There's no internet. It's like solitary prison. Right. No doubt. They were putting you in the hole. You were in the hole. Right. When you went to your room, and my parents would take the phone off the hook in their bedroom and put it under their pillow. So that basically all the phones in the house would not unoperable. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because they didn't care. No phone call. And so, you know, and I didn't have a phone in my room. I had nothing. I had a I think I had a record player and a couple 45s. I think I listened to Blondie and Motley Crue for like 2 days.
Yeah, right.
Worst records to have.
Right.
Like, shout out the Devil and Blondie. And so I'm like freaking out in my room. I'm like, man, my parents. I really thought my life was over. I was like, my parents ruined their life. I can't believe you guys did that. And what I should mention is I also, the reason I really got into most trouble is that my mom went downstairs and apparently we thought the best place to hide all the empty beers and liquor bottles was in my dryer. So
naturally,
I thought, when it's all done, I'll clean that up.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Yeah, so they found those. So the thing is, I went to school on Monday. And I thought, man, my life is over. These people are hating me. This thing went wrong. Mm-hmm. And I walk in the door to Blendon Junior High School, and the cafeteria's on the left. There's a hallway on the right, and I'm like, oh, great. And I start walking in, and people are like hanging out in the cafeteria before class starts. And a couple people walk by, and they're like, hey, what's up, man? What's up, Justin? What's up? And I'm like, hey, what's up? And I walk in, and the cool crowd is at the cool table. There's actually like a cool table.
Yeah.
And they're all like waving me over. Come on, man, come over. So it turns out what happened was just what I described. Everybody kind of took off, but of course. The story everybody else got was that the cops came and this crazy party.
You were a fucking legend.
SWAT team busted the door, guns drawn.
They all took off and scattered and ran around and had fun for a while. And it turned out I had this big blowout party, and literally half the school was claiming to have been there. There's probably 30 people, and half the school's like, yeah, man, I was at that party where the cops came, and so that was kind of cool, but. Here's the point of this whole long, drawn-out story about my childhood is that what I know for a fact is from that day forward, I started hanging out with that group of people and some other people. But from that day forward, every time we got together and we were getting ready to go do something, the first question we asked was, who can get alcohol?
Absolutely.
That day forward.
Yeah.
Literally. Rest of junior high, high school, after school. But literally that moment I can remember clearly. Like, I think the next thing was like a bonfire, and there's like a haunted house, and we'd go to the Westboro Mall, the arcade, and watch movies, and we'd go to whatever. But the first question was, who can get liquor?
Yep.
And at that age, I remember we'd all steal beers. The big thing was you would take glass pop bottles back then, and everybody, for some reason, maybe it's just in my imagination, but it seemed like everybody's parents had a liquor, like a bar. And we would we made like kamikazes, you know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You would literally pour a little bit out of each bottle until you filled the Pepsi bottle. And then we would sit out somewhere. We'd get dropped off by our parents and somebody'd sneak it. And then you'd get this warm Pepsi bottle of mixed liquor. We'd pass it around and try to get as much in you as you could.
Yep.
And that's what we did, man. So that was really where it started and kept going. I will say this, again, I won't go through everything, but 8th grade was my very first consequence. Same stuff had been going on, same group of people doing the same stuff, and they had this thing at Showbiz After Hours. It was on 161 in Raintree Plaza. And if you know what Showbiz is, it's like a ghetto Chuck E. Cheese kind of thing. Okay. It used to be around, and they had a bear instead of a... Anyway, it was
I'm picturing Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And but they had this DJ that would DJ there, and they did like these kid dances, and they called it I don't know what they called it, but it was like a teen night basically.
Sure.
And Fritz the Night Owl, if you guys have any idea who he is, he's like a Columbus legend. He used to do double chiller theater Friday night. He'd show 2 back-to-back scary movies. It started at 11:30 until like 3 in the morning. And but he also did a lot of DJing. And so Fritz the Night Owl DJ'd it, and it was like a kids dance at the thing. And me and my friends went, and we brought these little like shampoo, conditioner travel bottles that we cleaned out with liquor in it.
Yep.
And so we had this little corner booth that we sat in. I mean, like, picture Scarface, like
right.
Like this, but in 8th grade.
Right, 8th graders.
So we got these red, like, the red glasses you would get at like Pizza Hut, the soda glasses, with like our picture of Pop.
Oh yeah.
And we're all sitting there with our girls, but we're taking our
Chi-Chi, bring the conditioner.
Yeah, exactly. And we would, but they caught us because we were pouring liquor in our Cokes and trying to be all smooth and drink them. And apparently, in 8th grade, you're not as smooth as you think when you're trying to play cool at the Chuck E. Cheese
Yeah.
to dance.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we got caught, and they called my dad, who had to come pick me up. And I'd already had the 7th grade incident. So that was like my first, you got in trouble. My parents then worried. A big thing that happened out of that was my dad used to drink beer, and every once in a while I'd see a bottle like Jack Daniel's or Jim Beam or something, and nothing major. My mom barely drank. But when I got busted then, my dad threw away all his, and he smoked Marlboro Reds. He threw away all the liquor in the house and threw away his cigarettes. He's never smoked or drank since then to this day.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
My mom still drank Miller Lite bottles, but my dad got rid of all that and never drank or smoked again.
Wow.
Which is still kind of a strange thing. Well, I won't go there. But anyway, he does. Anyway, so I got in trouble for that. My parents were worried for good reason, and so that was when things started being like Justin's. That's when I consciously became the kid they worried about, things. But I played football and I ran track and I kept my grades at about a C, just eligibility level.
Yeah.
And tried to stay out of trouble, and the sports kind of helped, and did some other stuff. And but you know how it is, high school, same thing. But what happens when you get to high school and everybody's starting to do it more, so it's less of a big deal.
Right.
You just drinking beer. We weren't hadn't taken it too far. But I was always one. We're always, a
little bit more.
We have to one up.
We're pushing the envelope.
Always pushing. Yeah, 100%.
Like when people first started smoking weed, I immediately looked into how I could buy and sell it. Immediately. Immediately. I just, it was bad. And so my junior year in high school, I got it's 1988. And they decided that they're going to start these new things in Westerville, where before that it was open lunches. Everybody drove. You could park wherever you wanted in the parking lot. You could go anywhere, do anything. It was pretty wild, and we got away with a lot. Like, we would have house parties that were like weird science, like something out of a movie. And the cops came and literally just poured beers out and told us to get leave and shit like that. But it was a very different time. Same thing with weed. We got pulled over once, and they found a bag of weed and beer right by Hoover Dam, and they just emptied the bag of weed out on the side of the road and poured our beers out and looked at where we lived on our driver's license and said, "We're going to drive by your house later and make sure your car's parked there." And that was it. So, yeah.
Damn well they ain't driving by there.
right. That's what I was. My buddy's like, "I got to take my car." I'm like, "Dude, they ain't going." He was he's like, "I got to go home."
Yeah.
Which I might have done the same thing. But we, so my junior year, they started all that. I played football. They made us start signing contracts. Have you ever seen like Dazed and Confused? It was kind of like the thing where they like, make them sign these contracts. You got to rat on people if they're doing stuff wrong. You won't drink. You won't smoke. You won't do. And they started doing that, and I was like, we were all like, whatever, that's whatever.
Yeah.
And but what other things they were doing that I didn't realize is they were going to start searching cars in the parking lot and start walking dogs around through the hallway and searching lockers.
God damn.
Yeah. Right. That's what I said. That's crazy. Like,
it's Reagan's America for
exactly.
you.
Yeah, it was about that time period. Exactly. Just say no. And so, long story short, I got called to the principal's office, and my football coach was there, and the vice principal was there, and somebody else, whatever. And apparently, they walked by my locker, and the dog was interested in what was in my locker, and it was enough, I think I had like a quarter pound of weed in my jean jacket in the locker, which, in hindsight was never not smart. And so they came to me and they said, "All right, here's the deal." It was the end of the school year, almost. They said, "You're either going to get suspended for the rest of the year and you're ineligible for football next year, or you can go to rehab." And I was like, "Rehab? It is." Yeah. And I had gone to, had detention, Saturday school, stuff like that. And I thought, rehab, it's just another thing. And then I found out it's 30 days. And I was like, so I went to Talbot Hall Adolescent. They used to have an adolescent program at Talbot Hall.
Okay.
An inpatient adolescent?
Yes.
Wow.
They had an inpatient adolescent at Talbot Hall at the time. It was one floor. It was one floor that's like one hallway down the first floor. And it was all adolescents. And it was a 30-day program.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and it was my first introduction to any kind of sobriety.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More Is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
And the different programs. And so I went there and started going through the program, and we did. What I remember about that most is a couple things. One is my parents visited me. That we went and we sat in the cafeteria for a family visit. My little brother's there, who's like at this point like it's 8th grade. And I just remember he was just like had this look of like he wanted to laugh, but at the same time was just like, oh,
right,
you know. And my parents are there, and they had this like family meeting where they talked to them a little bit, and then we get together. And I just remember the first thing she said is, "You're not powerless. You can beat this thing. I don't know what they're trying to tell you. You're powerless." And I was just like, "Yeah, that's right."
Yeah.
But you know, best intentions. But and the other thing I remember is we had these small groups. And for the first time sitting in these small groups and having little discussions, I remember hints of people starting to get real towards the end and talk about some feelings and stuff, which, you know, as adolescents was pretty shallow still. But I remember thinking, this is kind of cool. I mean, I wish we could kind of like it was kind of neat. We started clicking a little bit. But the minute I got out, my buddy picked me up. We drove to Ennis Woods and smoked a joint and laughed about me going to rehab, you know.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, hey, you're a... And so... didn't have any effect, but there it is. I went to rehab when I was a junior in high school. So
yeah, sure.
It's a pretty good sign that things to come.
No doubt.
But in my mind, I didn't have any concept of the idea that I had a problem.
Right.
You just got busted.
I got busted.
You got busted.
They gave me some
consequence.
street cred, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, my senior year.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Hey,
It's
he went
like,
to rehab.
He went to rehab.
Bro,
He had
he
this
had
summer.
5 keys in
Right,
his
yeah,
right.
right.
Shit was crazy. DEA was in here.
Junior high, he had a banger, man.
Yeah.
He burned his house down.
Right. He looked at Scarface, like Scarface at the junior dance.
Man, this kid's a heavy hitter. And yeah, I'm so far from any of that. And so I don't know, man. You know how it goes. From there, it was a lot of the same. Well, to tell you how much of an effect it had on me, I got out. That rehab was 30 days. It was like from the beginning of June to the end of June. Then we had like July of summer, and then August started like 2-a-days for football. You know, you have to like go in at the end of summer for a while. And between getting out of rehab and before 2-a-days started, me and a bunch of friends went to a Def Leppard concert in Cincinnati, the Pyromania tour, by the way, the very first.
Nice.
It was a badass one. And somehow between campus, so I went to a party on campus. These people said they had Def Leppard tickets. There's me and a buddy, and there's these girls and these other dudes who were going. They had extra tickets. We're like, we're going. Left this campus party, went to this girl's house, went to some other party. Next thing I know, we're in a car driving to Cincinnati. We go to Def Leppard. While I'm at Def Leppard, some girl tells me how her car's in Louisville and she needs somebody to drive her to Louisville to pick up her car to bring it back to Columbus. So some girl offers to do it, and I say, I'll go with her. We get dropped off in Louisville. I wake up in the morning to find out the car doesn't run, that she needs to get it fixed first before we come back. And we end up staying for like a week and just drinking and smoking. And I don't tell my parents. I have a girlfriend back here who had a lot of money and lived in Worthington. Her parents hired a private detective to find me because they were so worried about me missing.
Wow.
Yeah, and I called from a payphone in Louisville. So when I called the next time, she's like, "Our detective knows you're in Kentucky," and I'm like, "I don't know, what detective? What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up coming back, and they had the vote. My coach made them vote on whether or not they let me back on the team because I missed like a week or 2-a-days, and like this whole drama. But you know,
Sounds like an R-rated John Hughes movie.
it was, dude, my whole life. It really was. It was like it was so stupid, but it was at the same time I was an idiot. I really slid through a lot of stuff that I look back today and realize, man, I should have been in a lot more trouble than I ever was.
I mean, it is as like a teenager, you're like, what? I'm just in Louisville for a week.
It's no big deal. Like, I'm cool.
Yeah.
I have daughters right now that are juniors and seniors in high school. If one of them left for a concert and was missing for a week, I would lose
You'd
my
be freaking
mind.
the F out.
Full Liam Neeson, there'd be a national
Then
manhunt.
she comes strolling in a week later and is like, hey, I met some girl. I was in Kentucky for a while. I'll be like, are you crazy? Especially after my history. So, you know, man, from there, it's just your typical stuff. I mean, well, probably not typical, but typical for us.
Typical for us.
For us, it's
It's a typical thing, you know.
Yeah.
You go to Louisville for a week,
Whatever.
like half pound of weed in your locker, you know.
Exactly. One of us is like typical Wednesdays, like blacking out.
Oh, yeah.
Ending up in another city, broke, beat up. Like, you know, it's a rare Wednesday. And so from there, you know, I remember my buddies all partied, and I did too. And And when we were in our 20s, this was like, so I graduated in 89. So in the early 90s, it's hard to even explain, but like at the time, it was so good financially, like our situation with money in this country, the economy, I guess is the best way to put it. So me and my buddies, everybody I knew was either going to school or went to school part-time and had a job. Half my buddies did landscaping. Half of us worked at either like a restaurant or whatever. I worked in a warehouse.
Sure.
You made like $8-9 an hour and you were good because we rented, we had 2-bedroom townhome that me and my buddy split. It was like $450 a month.
Oh.
And yeah, it was like $450 a month
wish.
for a 2-bedroom townhome. We lived on like northeast side. Everybody lived on like 161 because the continent was happening. All the bars were on Morse Road and 161 were hot back then.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we had a 2-bedroom townhome with a buddy. Everybody I knew was kind of paired up doing stuff like that. And we'd work, 9 to 5 and come home and bring home a 12-pack each. And we'd sit down and people would come over and we'd get wings and we'd play euchre and we'd drink and smoke and find, every night of the week there was like a theme night, back then. I think it was even more back then, but like, football Sunday and Monday, Tuesdays there was something, Wednesdays there was a big thing, Thursdays they had to gather in at the continent, Friday, Saturday it was just, there was something. So every night was just a thing. And we just, every night we would drink a 12-pack and end up going, usually sit at home, drink for a while, then go to a bar for a little while, then come back to the house after with some people, and that was that. But we did that for a couple of years, and then I ended up meeting a girl, and that's in every lead. There's like, and then I met,
and then
fill in the blank,
the girl,
and that's usually where it takes a turn too, right?
Most of the time, yes.
And then it began.
Yeah.
So I met a girl on a blind date, and I'm about to say her name. Her name begins with a B, but should we? Not that it matters.
Guess the name in the comments.
Right.
Whoever gets it right will Venmo you $1.
There's a few out there, and but we met, and we ended up getting married when I was 22. Yeah, 22.
Oh, wow.
I was 22.
Yeah.
And we got married, and she liked to drink. I liked to drink. I smoked a little bit. She knew about it. She kind of sort of did. And I was already dabbling in a few other things, but that was that. We got married and really quickly. Like, she was a hairdresser, and I was working at like a warehouse kind of a deal. We had like dual income, no children. We bought a house in Westerville right on Dempsey and Hempstead, a little ranch, and I had a little Jeep Cherokee. She had a Honda Accord, and bought a hot tub.
Hell
whatever.
yes, you
Living
did.
the fucking dream.
Dude, that's the American fucking dream
That's the
right
shit
there.
that pisses me off. Like when I see someone like Gen X or older giving a lead, and they're like, "Then I got back from Nam," or like I like graduated high school and I walked into a factory, and then 6 months later I bought a house.
Yeah.
And me and my wife both had a car. I'm like, we heard some guy a couple months ago. He sold pagers.
Right.
And he had like a house, a boat, 2 cars. His wife didn't work.
Dude,
I'm like,
pagers
man,
and
fuck
cell phones
this
back in
guy.
the 80s were like, you were
That was
you were
the
rolling
thing.
if you had
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
It's like now, like, dude, I look at it's,
Believe me, and for my generation, we look at our parents and we thought the same thing. Like, my grandparents bought their house for like $4,000. I don't know what.
Right,
like
right.
it was like $10,000.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
right.
Like, and cars were like $2,500 brand new.
Man,
loaded, and
I
it's like,
wish.
But of course, they were making like 60 cents an hour.
Right,
So-
right. Much different times.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we had this dual income, no kids. Our other friends were starting to, and it was fun for a while. We both worked, we partied, we had friends we partied with. I started at that point in time, I started getting into selling drugs a little bit and just weed. I'm talk about that, right?
oh yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely,
yeah.
please.
All right. So I started selling weed because, of course, I smoked. A bunch of my friends smoked, and I always seemed to have a knack, like we all do, and I'm sure you both were. I always knew a guy. You know what I mean? I knew a guy. That's where the great thing was, is I was the middle guy. And I think, honestly, a part of the early part of my story about adapting because I had a lot of friends who were black and lived in other sides of town and places where a lot of my friends would never scared to go off of Weber and off of different areas, and I was friends.
Shout out Linden area.
Yeah, Linden, exactly. You know, back then there was some scary places. Like if you went to Windsor Terrace and some of those places, like I knew people that I've gone there a couple times. I didn't hang out by myself, but so I knew some people that were more serious than what most of the Westerville kids knew. So I was a very good contact when people wanted stuff. And so I decided I can buy a pound of weed, and then I'm just going to break it down and sell. My friends buy quarters and halves, maybe an ounce at the most they would get. But I'd buy a pound, and that would last me, a long time, and I'd keep it in my house. And everybody wanted a bag, I'd get one, and I basically got mine free. And then I decided that I was going to make a grow room in our house. And I made this little grow room because it seemed, I've been reading High Times forever. How hard can it be? And I bought a light and a couple timers, and
Right.
So then I started growing, and she was cool with that. She was cool with the other thing, and but then after about 4 years, all our friends that were in the same spot as us started either graduating college and getting really good jobs, or they'd been married for a while, and they were all now maturing. they were about, some of them were having kids.
Yeah.
They were looking at another house. They were getting promoted into real jobs and not wanting to go out with us, 5 nights a week.
Right. Yeah.
And she was kind of ready for the same thing. She's like, all right, well, and my reaction was, why would we do that? Like, things are great.
Oh yeah.
Like, why would we want to do that? Now, that's the very short, simplified version of what went wrong. There was a lot more, but we split up. And like any great alcoholic, as soon as we broke up, and so this is when I was 26, and this is where it's crazy for me to believe that that's where things really started getting bad and how long they went bad for. But when we broke up, I immediately was like, because I started getting into doing coke more.
Sure.
I started, not a ton, because I couldn't really afford it, but I started getting into other stuff, and I wanted to deal a little more, and I was getting into some other, just the whole scene. And so when we split up, I just remember thinking, thank God, dude, now I can do all. My problem was, because I was starting to get rode on a lot about a lot of shit because I was kind of messing up. And I thought, now that she's gone, now I don't have anybody to ride me ass about all this shit all the time. It's going to be great. I can do what I want. I can come home from work, sit down, and do bong hits and go out with my buddies anytime and not get yelled out about what time I come home or what are you doing or where you going and all that. I can have them come over whenever I want. And I thought, this is going to be great. Well, that was where things started getting really bad. I moved into an apartment at first by myself and whatever. And then me and a buddy got two brothers, actually, that I'm good friends with since I grew up, since I was little. But they both partied like me. And, well, not like me, but they both partied. And we got a place in Old Town East, just east of downtown off of East Broad. And again, it was a 3-bedroom, it was a double house, big old house, in that area. It's a half a double. It's 3 bedrooms, all old wood brick. And we paid $500 a month.
Oh man,
the three of us.
Perfect.
Right. So all of a sudden, and right at that time, I got my first real adult IT job, and working for this accounting firm. And to tell you how different it was, so this is late 90s. I think I was making $35,000 a year, and that was bank. I was like, if I could ever hit 50, I'm done. I can cruise for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And but I'll tell you this: you got to think about it. My part of rent was $200 a month. I had a car payment, I think, that was $200, not even probably $185 a month, and that was my bills. You know what I mean? So making bringing home even $1,200 every 2 weeks or something.
Oh, you're balling.
Right. My bills,
easy.
My bills are $400 a month.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
So that leaves me $800 extra dollars.
Yeah. Right.
So here's the bad part. I decided, hey man, I'm doing awesome. I think I should start doing more coke.
Absolutely. What a smart idea.
I was like, you know what I can do now?
Cocaine.
Not invest, not save. I was like, man, now we can really start doing what I want. And that's where things really started progressing. And I can honestly tell you that we lived there for a few years, maybe 3 or 4. The one brother moved out. We partied every night. And so at this point we're partying like Victorian Village and downtown and different stuff. So these two brothers, one of them's gay, one of them isn't. These have been my friends since we were little kids. The one who's gay is like one of my coolest friends or whatever. But man, his friends, we think we party. Dude, these guys, man, they were introducing me to drugs that other people didn't discover for years.
Sure.
They were into Special K and that shit before I even heard of it. Shit like that. I didn't actually do it. I was all purely coke, weed, and alcohol.
The Minnesota Defectives podcast is brought to you by Ride Sober, an online community for sober bikers.
At RideXSober on social media and RideXSober.com.
Check them out today for apparel like t-shirts, hoodies, hats, riding gloves, and garage banners.
Ride sober, boldly sober.
Boldly sober.
So now were both of your roommates also doing coke and drinking?
Yeah, the oldest of the two, which was only by a year, was the one who was gay, which I keep saying that like it matters, but it's just a way to distinguish them. And him and his friends partied hard.
Okay.
The other brother was more into just drinking and smoking.
Yeah.
He didn't do as much of anything else. And
Gotcha.
He partied, but he just was mostly drinking and smoking. But the one brother moved out and got a new place. The other brother stayed. Then he got a girlfriend. The girlfriend got pregnant. They moved out. So this is over a period of like years.
Sure.
And nothing's changed for me. I'm still,
Yeah.
I'm now like my room is like my little place, and I'm starting to just kind of be there all the time. And I'm going out less because I'm starting to go out and I'm partying, but then I'm half kind of geeked, so I can't wait to get out of my house to get to the bar. And I get to the bar and drink about 2 drinks. I'm like, I need to get home.
Sure.
And then I want to go home and just sit in my room. And I had a Nintendo 64 back then, and I would just sit and sit up all night playing it alone by myself in my room. And then my roommate moved out, and then eventually I got evicted or left, or I don't even know how it happened. And honest to God, from there is a really blurry area. I moved in a couple different apartments around Columbus, probably like 5 or 6 over the next several years.
And you're still maintaining the IT job at this point?
No. Interesting story.
Yeah.
Well, it's really impressive.
Wow,
Like railing 8 balls every
Right,
night.
yeah,
Like,
having a coke habit,
Doing like
yeah.
40 hours of IT
Right.
during the week.
So here's what happens. what had happened is, so 9/11, right? Okay. This is the end of me living at that place, 9/11. I'm on my bed. I'm in bed sleeping, and my phone rings, and my mom. It's like noon on like a Wednesday. On like a Wednesday,
right?
And you called me in the middle of the night.
Right.
So my IT job at this point, I had switched to a different IT job, but it was really good. It was working for a bunch of doctors' offices and hospitals. And but what it was is I worked for a company that we supported a whole bunch of different doctors and hospitals, grant sports medicine, and a bunch of really good ones. And my boss was in Tennessee though, so I was the only one here. And so what I'd figured out is I would just basically get up long enough to message everybody and tell them I was going to be at a different office for a while. Each office thought I was going to be a different one. I just worked off my laptop and a cell phone. And if there was a real emergency, if I have to go to work, I get up.
Right.
But so I was already on the outs on that. My phone rings. My mom says, "Hey, do you see on TV there's a plane hit the tower?" I'm like, "What are you calling me for?" "Yeah, okay, whatever." Turn on the TV. I'm sitting there kind of like trying to wake up, and the first plane hit the first tower, and I remember I was like, wow, that's crazy. And it really wasn't anything crazy at that time. And then as I'm watching, the second plane hits the second tower, and I'm like, weird. And I'm assuming you guys probably were too young to really be in it, but it was one of the most surreal things. So in my lifetime, Vietnam was before me. There was nothing until 9/11.
Right.
Like, I didn't know we never had a conflict. I didn't know. I didn't suspect anything of it. The idea that something like this would happen was like a movie.
Yeah.
And so when the second plane hit the second tower, I was like, wow, that's super crazy. And the next thing you know, they're talking on the TV about plane hitting the Pentagon and another one hit the thing, and one was headed for Washington, and it's a terrorist attack. And everybody's freaking out. And at this point, one of the towers falls next to them.
Yeah.
So, of course, what I did was I jumped up and called my Coke dealer. I swear to God, this is the
believe
truth.
that.
And I said, hey, man, dude, you see what's going on? He's like, oh, yeah, this is crazy. I said, listen, I knew who his dealer was. I said, you got to call so-and-so and
Stock
re-up
up.
right now. Right.
Stock
I said,
up.
stock up.
Yep.
I said, call him right now.
100%.
Get whatever he gets, dude, because it's going to dry up
Yep.
and everybody's going to want. I said, I'll be right over. And that was my reaction to 9/11.
Yeah.
And I went to his house and geeked out for like 2 days watching footage.
Watching CNN,
Watching
right.
CNN. And so that was that. So that was my reaction to 9/11. And shortly after that, lost my job. And then I progressively got worse and worse jobs, and I couldn't get jobs. I got basically every apartment I got or house I got, I would get just enough money. And I was dealing more because I didn't have jobs, and that was my only way of getting income. I knew people still, at this point, things were not bad enough. I hadn't ripped people off or gotten so bad that people wouldn't do anything with me. So I was basically like a salesman. I knew enough people that wanted weed and other stuff that I would call and be like, hey man, this really good shit just came in, but you really want to check this,
Yeah.
because I want them to get it,
You're the
because
pusher.
I'm getting stuff off of
Yeah.
it, and and it's like, it's ridiculous. And so that's really one of the main ways I got money. Every apartment I got, I would get just enough money to put down the deposit, pay a month rent or two, and then I could ride out another month or two not paying before they finally threw me out. I think I had like 6 apartments in 5 years over, really, and I really don't remember much. I lost my driver's license. I was unemployable at that point.
Yeah.
Completely unemployable. And when I got evicted from the last place that I lived, a guy who lived across the hall from me who also got evicted at the same time. His name was Skater John. And I don't remember. We lived in a place on 4th, and it was like, everybody called him Skater John. So me and Skater John walked out in the hallway where all our shit was stacked up when our doors were locked the same day, and we're like, hey man, we should move in together. We should
You need a place.
You need a roommate.
Shit. Let's go.
So we did, and one of my friends said he knew a guy who had a place, and he was going to help me out. So it turns out we get all our stuff loaded up, and we get dropped off on, if you know where Linwood is, Livingston and Linwood.
Oh, okay.
If you don't know where it is, it's as bad as you think. It's kind of back. It's like back behind Children. If you go to Children's Hospital, but then go back into the area you don't want to be in, it was back in there. And so we get dropped off, and it's an abandoned house, boarded up abandoned house. I have a picture of it that's framed that I keep on my thing today. I took
Hell yeah.
I went back after the first week I got sober and took a picture of it. And abandoned house, boarded up windows. We had to kick a board in to get in the basement to get into it. And we basically sheeted off the living room with sheets. This is winter too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So we sheeted off the room.
Yep.
It had electric but no gas.
Ah.
And so we had a space heater. All our clothes piled up on a couple couches, and we and a TV, and that's where we stayed for a long time, man. It was miserable. We would heat up water in a Tupperware container and a microwave in the kitchen to go in the bathroom and clean up.
Oh, sure.
And people would come beat on the door sometimes. Other homeless people like wanting in because they could see the light in there, which was a thing I'd never experienced. This is not real fun to wake up to. And we were just basically, we would go to the different little bar. We went to Bernie's a lot. I don't know if you guys knew what Bernie's was. It used to be a punk live music bar that was like a bunch of skater punks and people. And we would go there a lot, and people would buy us, some PBRs and smoke some weed. And we'd crawl our way back to our place and sleep in there, freezing. I basically sold a lot of plasma 2 days a week. I would go down to ZLB.
Yep.
I'd scrape up enough change to ride the Coda bus to the ZLB plasma and sell plasma, and that's where it ended up pretty much. And
you're still doing pretty much just coke at this time.
Coke. Well, yeah. So it was. The way I finally got to support my habit right before this leads right into sobriety, which I'll hurry up and get to. I apologize.
No, you're good. No, for sure.
How did it have electricity the whole time?
I don't know, man. It just did. That's what we were.
That's
we
just
were
a
loving
fucking
life.
diamond in it. So then you're just waking up every morning like, is it today the day? And you're like, flip the
right,
light switch, go, oh, thank God.
Still on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we had an electric space heater and a TV in the living room And there's a microwave that worked in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And the
that's
fridge worked, but there's no gas, so it was fucking cold.
No doubt.
Sorry,
No, you're.
And so I went to ZLB Plasma 2 days a week. Totally. I don't know how this even worked, but I ended up getting a job there. Right.
Okay.
And this is so sad.
donator to
Dude,
employee.
right,
shit.
exactly.
Yeah.
And somehow I got a job there, and I was the guy that you come in and they'd prick your finger and test your
Yep.
blood and ask you 100 questions before you screened you before you went back. And so I started off doing that, and eventually they let me do phlebotomy. Dude,
Oh, no
I am
shit.
strung out, no medical
And they let
experience.
you do that?
And I was sticking people
Yeah.
with needles.
That's wild.
You know how they taught me? They took a bag of saline. They would take the pieces of leftover tubing, lay it on the bags of saline, pull a rubber glove over it, and then you'd practice sticking the needle through the rubber glove into the tube without going into the bag of saline.
Oh, wow.
That was your
That
That
was
was
the
the
training.
test.
That was the full
Yeah,
training.
yeah,
Wow.
And that you don't need to be like medically licensed to do that.
Apparently not.
Well, you do now.
I mean, you probably do. You probably should. But then here's the thing. My IT training, I don't know if I should, well, whatever. My IT training, they ended up giving me a job as the guy when you're done donating, you walk up with your chart and your little, in your thing for where you donated, and they type it all in the thing, and then they print this little receipt out and give it to you, and there's an ATM in there, and you basically put in the last 4 of your social security number and this 4-digit pin that they print out for you, and then it spits out your like $35 or whatever. And that you hand me the chart, and then we mark it and then put it away, and somebody files them away. And so that ended up being my job. Well, I stayed there like a year or more because I learned a way to circumvent. So basically, I learned how to print tickets on non-existent donations, and my girlfriend came and I'd just give her the tickets. She'd go to the ATM a couple times. I'd give her like 2 of them. It was enough money that after I got off work, she'd pick me up. We'd stop by my dude's house. We'd get a little teen.
Yep.
Finish it up. Next day I'd come in. I worked second shift. And literally every single night for about a year and a half leading up to my sobriety. And, well, pretty much. And that ended when one day they realized something was happening. They did an audit or something. Well, how it lasted as long as it did. I mean, it was a solid $75 a day.
Oh, wow.
And,
It goes a long way
Yeah,
when you're
dude.
towards like the end of your rope
absolutely.
like that. Like,
Yes.
That's a hell of a hustle.
well, I went to work every day for that reason.
Yeah. Oh, no
God,
doubt.
I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
Like I was there every day.
like, hey, you want to take Sunday? No.
I
I'm
was there
coming.
every day. I
Yeah.
would miss work because I couldn't. 'Cause
Right.
I was like, that was
Absolutely.
and so they said, hey man, they figured out some money was supposed to happen. So what do they do? They called me up and said, hey, we need you to help us find out what's going on. Somebody's been stealing money, and we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out how they're doing it in the system and stuff. And I was using other people's logins, and so it wasn't tracked to me. And which I'm not bragging about. This is all fucked
Right.
up, but so the next day I came in, went upstairs to the office, formatted all the DVR because they had cameras, formatted all the DVR video coverage, and was like, shit, fuck, I gotta make sure they can't figure it out. And then they called me up to the office, and they knew at that point they'd somehow put it, wasn't rocket science, put it together, and they were like, hey, do you have something you want to tell us or whatever? I was like, yeah, I quit. And I left, and then I went home and waited for the police to show up, and they never did. And things just got worse. My girlfriend, I met a girl at the Plasma Center, which sounds like the worst. Like,
I can't tell if that's a
Country
step
western
above
song.
or below
Right.
meeting a girl in
At
detox.
rehab?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Above or below that, but it's neck and neck.
that's the pre-girl meet girl detox.
Yeah.
You first meet one at the Plaza Center. The next step is detox.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I met a girl at the Plaza Center. We hooked up. We got together because I was living in the abandoned house, right? And she had an apartment, and so that was all I needed to know.
That's a no-brainer right there.
And she was willing to let me live there. Now, we were together right at that time, so things are horrible. We live in this little place on Cleveland Avenue. She gets pregnant. I'm laying on the couch every day because every night I'm managing to still get enough of what I need to just she'd go to bed and I'd stay up, and then she'd wake up to go to work in the morning, and I'd pretend like I was sleeping on the couch because I hadn't been able to sleep. It was miserable. I'm stealing money from her, the last $10 she needs for gas, out of her purse in the middle of the night, or $20, and she's waking up like, where's my gas money? I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about? And we're having these conversations, like she's waking me up, and we're sitting in the kitchen, and her money's missing, and I'm geeked out and trying to act like I'm not, and I just remember staying in the kitchen and her being like, so upset, and me being distressed, and I remember like just tears running out my face, and being bummed out, and being like, I'm really sorry, I'm never gonna do this again, I don't know what's wrong, I just whatever, and really meaning it, be like, that's it, I'm done, no more. And then like 3 days later, it was like deja vu. I'd be standing there saying the same thing, feeling like crap again. And so she got pregnant. She quit partying. Of course, I got her partying a little bit, she's with me. She quit when she got pregnant. I said I was going to. I couldn't. She had my daughter and got pregnant again. They're 10 months apart. These are the two daughters right now that are juniors and seniors in high school.
Yeah.
And she got pregnant again right away. And so one morning, she's pregnant at work. I still haven't been working. She works at the dog shelter. She's at work, pregnant, working on dog kennels. I'm at home on the couch still. Newborn baby in a little bouncy chair. And I got up one morning and went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror and was just like, dude, what's going on? And I looked out and saw her in a little bouncy chair next to the couch, and something just said, like, that's it, dude. Like, something's going to happen one way or another right here, I don't know what the alternative was. I never thought about literally killing myself, but I don't know. I just knew something was not going to work, and there was nowhere to run, and I just was too exhausted to even think about it. And so that's when I made a phone call, and I ended up getting a hold of NetCare, and they did like an evaluation. So I went there for an evaluation. I remember I called my girlfriend at the time and said, hey, I need help, man. I need to do something. She was like, I remember I could hear her pulling up in the driveway before I hung up the phone. I was like, you need to, I was like, say less clear. Yeah, right. And so she drove me to NetCare. They did an evaluation. They said, we can get you into Mary Haven. I went to Mary Haven. They said, we'll get you in, but we can't do it tonight. We need to get this clearance from your doctor, because I had surprise, I had a heart attack at one point, already. Yeah, cocaine induced, which was fun because I was in St. Anne's, and the nurse was somebody I went to high school with, a girl I went to high school with.
Oh shit!
And I was like, I didn't do any drugs, this, not. And then she came in the room when I was laying there, and she's like, Justin, they can tell like what's in your blood. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Also, you're 30 and you had a heart attack, so a little interesting.
Yeah, and you should slow down. I was like, yeah, okay. Loser. So, I had to get this clearance. So I just remember that night where I had to stay home one more night before I went to Mary Haven the next day, crawling out of my skin. I had not done coke every night for years at this point. Years. And then smoking weed and drinking was just sun up to sundown all the time with it too. But so like that one night, I just remember I was like, it was horrible. And the next day we went there and they brought me in, and I detoxed. Now, I'd been to a couple rehabs that I don't even mention that were spread out in there a couple different times when stuff was going wrong. My parents wanted to help me out. Never stuck, never stayed sober more than a day. So when I did detox here, when I got out, they said, we don't have any beds available, so you're going to do this ambulatory detox, this thing where you come in from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and we do like counseling, and it's a small group. And so I lived over off of Morrison, Cleveland, and I didn't have a driver's license. She worked, so I was catching 2 COTA buses. They gave me bus passes.
Yeah.
And I would catch one bus from Morrison, Cleveland to like, I don't know, somewhere, wherever, and then switch to another bus, and it would take me to Mary Haven over off of Allen Creek at 10 a.m., and I would do that till 2. And like the first day I was there, I met these 2 other guys, and they were like serious about getting sober, and I thought I was serious. I didn't know, but I thought I was. And the second day, I remember they came back and they had told us to get sponsors and go to meetings and all this kind of stuff. And they were like, hey man, we went to these things and we got these people to help us out. And And I remember thinking right away, man, I'm already fucking up, dude. I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. And so the very next day I went and did the same thing. And from there, it was just, I just stuck it out, man. I don't know what it was, but I just kept going to meetings and got a sponsor and did all the stuff I was told to do and kept coming. And after about 4 months, I got a job, and but the thing was, it was going to be second shift. So the sponsor I got in the place I was going was at 6:30 at night. So now I had to get a new place, and so I started going to this place at noon every day. They had a daily place meeting at noon, and I got a new one. And he was like, "Oh, we're going to start over from the beginning, even though you had one before." And I was like, "Oh man, like I'm already 4 months into it, dude."
Yeah.
And so we started over together, and everything went great. After about a year, I got a guy I was sponsoring. He was brand new, and he didn't have a license. And I drove him to meetings several days a week, worked him through all the stuff, and he stuck around for a solid year. And it got me from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah.
That's wild. The
Yeah.
first sponsee out the gate to
Oh,
stick
dude.
around for a year. That
1
is
year.
a fucking blessing.
And for me, it helped me so much because
I bet.
I
Oh,
was
yeah.
just, you know how you're just trying to get
Yes.
to one.
Yes.
So then when I got to one, instead of being like, okay, I got it, I got this guy.
You got
Now
this
I'm
guy.
like,
Get him to
and he
one.
was
Yeah.
fired up. He
Yeah.
was all for it.
That's
which
a
was
beautiful
so
thing.
great. And for a solid year, man,
Yeah.
I was driving him, and
Yeah.
he was really, really into it. I was taking him to events and stuff, and
Yeah.
and he got a year, and then he kind of disappeared, met a girl, and blah, blah, blah. But it got me to 2.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just stayed super active, man. Met lots of guys that were cool. Started doing like poker nights at my house.
Oh,
We did-
yeah.
We did movie nights. We'd go out to eat. You know, there's a good group of guys that I met that we just started running around and doing all kinds of stuff together, and went to meet. I today, my sobriety is February 20th, 2008. So I just had 17 years 1 week ago.
Awesome.
yeah.
And to this day, I go to at least 5 meetings a week.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
I just do.
Yeah.
It's just my thing. I don't think you need to have it necessarily. It's
Yeah.
not for everybody.
Uh-huh.
There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But I just do because I do. And I don't have to. I don't always do it that much. But like when I have time off, that's kind of something I do
You
when
enjoy
I
it.
got a free day.
Yeah.
Either I'll catch one really early.
Yeah.
I go to 7 a.m. meetings, believe it or not,
Sure.
sometimes because I'm
yeah.
used to getting up for work. So if I get up and I'm not working, I'll go catch one.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I go to like, you know, the evening ones. And
Let me ask you this: when you were in Maryhaven,
Right.
and you were doing all that, and you first got introduced to meetings and stuff, did you have any weird like preconceived notions about them, or
yeah.
did you get a weird feeling first going?
Well, I had been to some, but I wasn't in any place to really want it or get it. So I'd had they weren't bad experiences, but to me it was like
You were
I
just not
had
into
to do
it.
it, and it
Yeah.
sucked. And so when I started going, I thought I was worried that it'd be like that. I'll tell you this: when I was at Maryhaven, like right after I detoxed, or right while I was detoxing, I heard a guy do a lead. It's the first time I'd really listened and was really like trying to figure out. I was really trying to figure out, can I do this?
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do it, but I really was like, I don't know if I can. I really don't.
Yeah.
Especially when I heard there was like some higher power gods, because of course I immediately was like,
Oh yeah, screw that.
'Cause I had done another rehab once, and I remember I completely faked it. I was like, I'm all in with God. I'm praying because they were really into the God thing, and I was like, I remember telling my parents, I found God, and I'm really, and they were just, I remember the look. I remember the
God,
look. Really,
yeah.
they were like, all right. And even me, I knew I was like, and I'm not. I don't have
Right.
God issues, but all I know is I didn't really feel it, but I thought I need to pretend like I do.
Right.
If I'm going to make this work. Well, this time around, I was like, I'm just going to be as honest as possible. So I heard this guy do a lead early on when I was at Maryhaven, and he said, this really hit me. He said, it's never too late to be the man you always wanted to be. And I was kind of just right at a point where that was just like, I had nothing when I went in there, and I was at a rock bottom. And I remember picturing in my mind, like, I'm going to stand up out of this seat, and walk away after his lead, and the me that came in here is going to still be sitting at that chair, and I'm going to just start over. And now that I'm going to be the dude that used to do all that shit but doesn't do it anymore. That dude did all that shit. That was me before. But now I'm going to be the guy that used to do all that shit but just doesn't do it anymore. He just doesn't have it. And so when I started going to meetings, that's kind of like, I almost just was like, I'm reinventing myself. This is going to be my thing.
I like that.
This is going to be my thing. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
This is going to be what because I didn't have anything else. It's not like I had a lot to give up.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to be the dude that used to be that dude that now is if they can call me the crazy sober guy if they want, I don't care. But I used to do all that, and now I'm done with it. So I don't do that anymore. So yeah, it was, and I just went all in, man. I went all in. I mean, I've had ups and downs like everybody. I've lost jobs. My mom passed away when I was about 3 years sober. That was big. You know, these 2 daughters. One was born right before I got sober. One was born shortly after. Sure. Those girls now are, like I said, junior and seniors in high school. Yeah. And I've been sober their whole life. So that's amazing. You know, I've lost jobs. I've been to jail sober. I mean, you can still do stupid shit sober. I mean, you know.
Okay.
Hey, Mental Defectives.
Would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
So we can help you make a lot of money.
A whole lot of money.
I'll just say this. When you go to meetings, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. So
fair enough. That's good. Fair enough. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
So, but it wasn't anything major. I spent a weekend and learned a valuable lesson.
Learned a lesson. What about some major, like, or notable successes you've had since getting sober?
I mean, honestly, all the stuff with my kids, probably just being there for them. I remember early on when the lights started coming on and stuff started clearing in my head.
Yeah.
Like I always was the type of person we kind of touched on earlier that like everywhere I was, I wanted to be somewhere else. Like if I was at home, I felt like I wanted to be out. If I was out, I wanted to be home. I always just didn't feel comfortable. Like I remember my mom had gone to like Al-Anon or something, I guess, and learned some lingo or whatever. And one point she was like, I just wish you were comfortable in your own skin. And I remember immediately being like, yeah, I know exactly what that means, because I just wasn't comfortable ever. Yeah. You know, I just remember going to family events, and I was always the one that would walk in the door immediately, had an excuse for why we couldn't stay long. We had to leave, and, you know, couldn't ever just relax and have conversations with the family and stuff. Yep. Everything. I always felt like just squirrely, you know?
Yeah, I can relate.
And the first time after a few months, I remember pulling out on the State Street in Westerville, get ready to go to a meeting, and I just left Tim Hortons, and I had an iced cappuccino. It was like a beautiful day, and it was like, you hear this a lot, but it was almost like the green, all of a sudden the color just came up a little bit. And the sun just came out, and I remember looking at the grass is all green. I was drinking this iced cappuccino. I was getting ready to turn to this meeting. I didn't have anywhere to be. I wasn't like rushed. I wasn't like, and I remember just being like, wow, dude, like this is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just one of those moments. And then I also remember coming home when my girls were real little, and we were wrestling around on the floor, on the carpet. And it's just like kind of was like this self-awareness all of a sudden. I was just like, man, this is just awesome. It's like
peace and serenity,
like awesome,
man.
dude.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And then getting jobs. And,
yeah.
But, you know, me and my girl's mom split up, and, you know, and just stuff happened. You know, got jobs and lost them, but I didn't feel any, you know, the last thing I thought about was using after that, because I was 100% sure that ship had sailed for me. you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's awesome.
And then Justin, what advice would you have for someone looking to get like into IT? Because it's such like a fast,
oh man,
like changing industry, and it's like you were there like the inception, and you're still in there.
Yeah,
like,
I started at Micro Center. When Windows 95 came out, I was working at Micro Center, and that was when basically people first realized that. Before that, nobody thought there was a reason to have a computer in your home.
Right. Yeah.
It was only a business thing. And that was like the big boom. It was like the PC, home PC thing. And they hired me as a tech while I was going to school at DeVry, and I knew nothing. Yeah. And they taught me how to like put hardware in machines and how to start doing software. But advice I'd have for somebody, if you're into it, I mean, I guess you need to look at the different avenues. There's so much. When you say IT, it could be, you have the mentality, do you want to sit and do code all day? you want to work on hardware? Do you want to support like offices and infrastructure? Like, and you might not know enough to know which one of those you want to do. Do you want to go into like security? And so just sort of, what the first thing to do is there's like a thing called A+, which is like the most generic level IT thing, but it's really good actually.
Yeah.
Something like that you can do a lot on your own, cheap. You just do it online. There's a lot of great online classes, but then if you get serious about it, I mean, you really don't have to spend a ton of money. You don't need to go to Ohio State and get a computer science bachelor's anymore. IT is still one of those fields where, if you get a couple certificates and some experience and you can do the job, you can still nowadays with the way they hire through online and all that, it's a little harder because they just automatically sort you in groups of like degree, no degree,
Yeah.
But you get enough certificates. If you're into it, find somebody that's into it and ask them to point you in the direction. It's a great field, man. If it wasn't for that, I don't know I have no idea what I'd be doing. Nothing good, I'm sure of that. But yeah, I don't know, man. People ask me that a lot. I mean, I say start with some cheap stuff. Don't jump right in and sign up for something big. Go online, play around with it. So much of what you do in IT you can self-teach and then get certificates. And then eventually, I mean, you could literally, then maybe go get an associate's, not have any, not go in debt at all.
Yeah.
Because once you get your foot in the door, it's all about learning,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What advice would you have for somebody who's getting sober or freshly, out of rehab sober?
Yeah. I mean, you got to go in with 2 feet. I mean, it's what you hear all the time. I mean, I've yet to see somebody successfully be a part-time sober person. Or like,
does that even exist?
Or
I haven't met him yet.
Work a little bit of a program. I mean,
Yeah.
you can. I've seen miserable people do it.
Right.
I'm not trying to talk down anybody's program. Honestly, I have no idea. There's people I know that do what I would consider like a minimal program that are just fine. Mm-hmm. But if you're freshly sober, I talk to people all the time. I was part of the treatment center committee for a while, and I still go around to rehabs a lot and talk to people. And I say, if you don't have a meeting lined up for the day you're out of here, you're already screwed up.
Yeah.
You don't want to leave and be like, oh, I need to rest a while from rehab.
Yeah.
You need to immediately get a sponsor, immediately go to meetings, immediately just jump in right away. I mean, stay away from the old places. It's just what all the stuff I heard was all true, even the stuff I hated. Old people, places, and things.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to, flashback to my junior year in high school when I went there, the first thing it says, you can't be around old people, places, and things. I'm like, these people are trying to tell me I got to lose all my friends and not go anywhere. That's crazy. Well, flash forward to when I got sober, I had no people, places.
All your friends had moved on, and you
gotta get rid of old people, places, and things. I was like, done, and done.
Yeah.
Now what? And that's why I said the thing when the guy's like, never too late to be the man I always want to be. I was like, well, no better time to start fresh than right now.
Absolutely.
So, but it is hard because you always hear the same thing. But I got friends that really care about me and this and that, and I do too.
Yeah.
But I still got to limit the amount of time I spend around them. I mean, you just got to dive in with both feet. Make running buddies. That really helps. That really helps. It's hard. There's nothing more awkward than 2 adult men that don't know each other trying to like buddy up. I remember standing at meetings and I didn't know where to put my hands when I'm talking to people, and and there's a circle of people talking, and you're like, I don't know how to get into this. Like, I feel weird. I should stay away. It is very awkward. It's normal to feel awkward, dude. It's you just got to get in it, man. If you want it, it's there. It's up to you to get involved.
I like it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I like it.
And you said you were a self-proclaimed nerd. What's the biggest thing you nerd out on?
I mean, I dress up and go to Comic-Con.
Oh, hell yeah.
Nice, dude. That's
Chris,
cool.
cue up hour 2 of the podcast, because here we fucking go. What? Hell yeah. What's some notable... See, I knew I threw the fucking Batman one in there for a reason. Dang. What's
I was Joker was a big one.
I like
Nice.
it. Which Joker?
Well, of course I was the last, not the last. It was the oh my god, my mind.
Heath
just
Ledger?
blanked.
Heath Ledger?
My
Yeah.
mind just blanked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
The Heath
Nice.
Ledger Joker.
Nice.
I had the shirt and the vest.
Oh,
and
dude, yeah, I
it
can
was,
see you
hell
pulling
it was
that off.
awesome. I had it was awesome, and we did. I have I have a group picture with the group we went with. There was about 15 of us, and it was all Star Wars.
Oh, sick.
And but I was
cool.
just like a TIE fighter pilot with the orange jumpsuit and the whole thing, and we had Darth Maul and we had a whole crew of people. A big enough one that it was really kind of fun, and my daughters were with me.
Nice.
And one of them was Rey, and one of them was an Ewok.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So we had a huge group of people, and it really felt like we were like stars, because as a group we were walking around, and like every 5 feet people were like, "Oh, can we get pictures?" And we had practiced, and we had like our little
Your pose.
right?
Yeah, that's
What
awesome.
character were you?
I was just like a TIE
TIE
fighter.
fighter.
TIE fighter.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, it was just like a TIE fighter pilot jumpsuit. Yeah.
Red leader.
So, yeah, exactly. kind of generic, but it was good. Yeah, it was. So those are fun. That's a big nerd thing. I don't know. I'm just a nerd. I used to play D&D when I was younger. I got into like Magic the Gathering when that was a big thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Back then. And I don't know, nerd. I'm a huge cinephile nerd, like movie nerd. I mean, I probably know more worthless movie lines than anybody ever. And I don't know. And I've always been into computers, so I mean that's not so nerdy anymore. But at the time,
No, it's not.
For a long time, it was, when me and my friend were going to like the state fairgrounds to buy the components to build our computers back in the '90s, we were nerds. Believe me. Believe me.
Oh my God! All right. Well, Brownie's getting restless, and so Justin, thank you so much for coming on today. Last thing before we get out of here. Despite what Jerry thinks, Elon Musk is not the name of a lesbian deodorant. But you were saying you were a huge fan of him, and I was wondering, was it based on like
What?
you really like Tesla, or you like the politics, or like it was the salute that got
I
you?
have
Why are you
never-
such an Elon Musk fan?
Never.
It's a Mental Defectives podcast. It's Milligram, Jerry with the G. Justin's here, Brownie is here. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.